traffic accident taking place on the busy streets of New Providence, this time involving a motorcyclist. All that and more in the Bahamas tonight.
Giant waves and a strong undertow make for a tragic day at the beach. We've got the details straight ahead.
We still need your help in solving a shooting death.
And then in sports, the battle for track supremacy in private schools. SAC puts 25 years on the line. The Bahamas Tonight starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
A vacation in paradise ends tragically today for a New York man after he drowned on Cabbage Beach. Good evening, everyone. I'm Keishla Adderley.
And I'm Andrew Knowles. Thanks for joining us. We're told the elderly man who was a passenger on a Carnival cruise line fell victim to today's giant waves and strong undertow. Kendino Knowles made it to the beach shortly after the incident that has put a damper on the trip of some tourists.
When I come, the guy was in the water and everyone took him out and they was trying to put him alive.
But the 66-year-old Splendor of Sea cruise passenger would not make it. It is believed that the man, who we understand as Theodore Koss of New York City, was the victim of the giant waves and strong undertow. Now, moments after the victim entered the water, we're told that he was seen floating as far out as the second buoy there. Now, a number of tourists rushed out to help the victim, we're told. They brought him to shore, tried to resuscitate him, conducting CPR.
Yeah, it was just really sad. We walked up on it and it was like he was already dead. Like the nurses couldn't do anything, and they were trying to resuscitate him when we were there. His stomach was all swollen, and there was really nothing else they could do.
They were sitting there giving him CPR, and it just wasn't enough.
But beach vendor Ishmael Sutherland says there are signs erected that advise tourists to swim at their own risk.
Before they leave from up on top of the hill here, we just let them know that, the water's a little rough. Don't go inside. You're swimming at your own risk. Because on this side, there's no lifeguards. You see what I'm saying? And that's why. So if anybody's drowning, we take it upon ourselves to save the people if we could.
This place is so busy with people. How come you guys don't have no lifeguards? I mean, what's the problem here?
How long were you guys out here? Were you able to witness the drowning? And
They pulled us both out. They pulled us both out.
Yeah, we got caught up in the current also.
Did you all see the sign where it says no lifeguards on duty?
Yeah, well, but there's a lot of people here.
This man was not so lucky either. He suffered a broken arm as a result of the strong waves, while this man also had to be pulled to shore. The water was so strong it pulled his shorts and underwear off.
But I feel that it's being a beach, they should have paramedics somewhere nearby because it took so long for paramedics to come with that man. It was people that just so happened to be out there that was doing CPR to try to save the man.
Sure, you need a lifeguard on this beach, but the sign said to the front of the road and back say, swim at your own risk. And despite today's tragedy, there were some tourists that still wanted to brave the giant waves, but they're still calling for officials to consider putting lifeguards on Cabbage Beach. Kendino Knowles, ZNS Network News.
A 26-year-old man on bail is in custody in connection with the country's latest murder. Police say shortly before 9 p.m. Tuesday, Darius Storm Adderley of Major Road, Yellowella Gardens, was sitting in his 2003 Dodge Town and Country van on a vacant lot at Roseland Street with a female friend when they were approached by an armed gunman. Head of the Central Detective Unit, Superintendent Paul Roll, explains what officers discovered and how the fatal ordeal unfolded.
Our preliminary investigation reveals that the victim was sitting in his vehicle along with his female companion having a conversation when they were accosted by a lone male who produced a handgun and demanded cash and their belongings. This male relieved them of their telephones, cash, and some jewelry, making good his escape into the cemetery nearby and disappearing into the dark. EMS responded to this scene where they treated the male for gunshot injury and transported him to Princess Margaret Hospital for medical assistance. This male later succumbed to his injuries.
Minutes following that shooting, a man was taken in for questioning, but police are still asking for your help.
Officers from the Firearm Tracing Investigation Unit went into the Chippenham area where they took into custody a male for questioning reference to this latest homicide. And so we appeal to anybody else who may have some additional information reference to this to contact us and help us to progress this investigation.
A man is fighting for his life in hospital after the motorcycle he was driving collided with a vehicle on Old Trail Road just after 8 o'clock this morning. Now, this accident just hours after a 30-year-old man died because of injuries in a traffic accident on Prince Charles Drive last night. Our Janaea Noel Ferguson was on the scene.
Early morning traffic came to a standstill Wednesday after a motorcycle and a sports utility vehicle collided on Old Trail Road near the exit of Solomon Supercenter. When our news team arrived, the motorcyclist had already been rushed to hospital by EMS personnel, and officers from the Serious Accident Unit were busy conducting their investigation. Inspector Harry Williams.
The police met a lone male rider of a white and black Suzuki motorbike, which is traveling south along Old Trail Road, and a black and white rendezvous vehicle traveling north. Those two vehicles collided, and the motorbike collided into another vehicle.
At last report, the victim was listed in critical condition. Eyewitnesses reported that the man was driving his motorcycle along the traffic when he was hit. His body, we're told, was flung into the air on impact, and he flipped over a black SUV before hitting the ground.
From all indication, there is no, we can't say whether or not he had a helmet on. We didn't meet one on the scene. Riding without a helmet, it's an offense, and if you're caught riding without a helmet, the police will enforce the law as far as they can to stop these type of incidents from happening.
Now, this early morning accident happened just hours after a man lost his life on Prince Charles Drive in another traffic accident. Police are cautioning all motorists to follow all road safety laws.
Shortly after 10 last night on Prince Charles Drive and Beatrice Drive, we had a vehicle that is traveling, a Honda vehicle traveling east, and we had an Ford Ranger truck traveling north out of Beatrice Avenue. Those two vehicles collided in the center of Prince Charles Drive and Beatrice Avenue. The male driver left the scene unresponsive.
Investigations into these latest traffic accidents continue. Janaea Noel Ferguson, ZNS Network News.
Justice Bernard Turner has sentenced 28-year-old Theophilus Lloyd to 5.5 years in prison, after he pleaded guilty to one count of receiving. Lloyd was also accused of robbing a man at gunpoint of an assortment of jewelry and cash back in September of 2010. But the prosecution offered no further evidence on the charge. You may recall that Lloyd's co-accused on the armed robbery charge, Lamar Roberts, was gunned down last November. The jury had already been selected to hear the case, but they were discharged after Roberts was killed. 51-year-old Andres fisherman Peter Taylor and 52-year-old Leland Curling were each sentenced to 5 years behind bars today after pleading guilty to possession of dangerous drugs with intent to supply. The duo was also sentenced to an additional 5 years for conspiring to possess dangerous drugs with intent to supply and 4 years for importation of dangerous drugs and conspiracy to import dangerous drugs. However, they'll serve all of the sentences at the same time. Taylor, Curling, and 3 other men were arraigned earlier in connection with that drug bust in Seabreeze last Monday. DEU and Defense Force officers reportedly caught Taylor and Curling offloading $681,000 worth of marijuana from a boat onto a truck. Following the sentencing, Curling apologized to his brother William Curling for using his boat without permission. Taylor also apologized to William Curling, who is facing 4 drug charges in connection with the matter. Foreign Minister Fred Mitchell says he is not amused about the comments recently made by Bahamas Faith Ministries President Dr. Myles Munroe and has accused the religious leader of being ignorant and anti-PLP. Dr. Munroe said recently that the foreign minister should keep his comments about the issue of the lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgendered community to himself, stating that Mr. Mitchell's stance does not represent the majority of the convictions of the Bahamian people. But Mr. Mitchell says Munroe's comments amount to nothing more than a vile personal attack.
Here you have a man going in a pulpit and saying this person is disqualified for the job he now has because of his views. That's what I mean. That proves the point. That shows the exact point. Not because the content of his character, not because he's disqualified from office. You know, he goes to great extent to say, oh, I respect him and this and that and all the rest of it. And then, but his views disqualify him from going further. And as I say, that's fine too. That's fine too. That's an honest commentary. Just don't go beyond that and start impugning me personally. That's where you cross the line.
And speaking on the issue of human rights, particularly for the LBGT community, we questioned the minister about whether he thinks an LBGT candidate should be disqualified from running for public office.
Martin Luther King said, it's the content of your character. That's the only thing that matters. The only thing that matters. And that's what this country stands for. The content of your character. You know?
Do you think Bahamians will vote for a gay or lesbian candidate?
I don't know that.
Particularly, not even as a prime minister, but even just as a member of parliament.
I think it would be irrelevant.
Okay.
I think it's irrelevant.
The education system is poised for a major reform.
During his contribution to the mid-year budget debate, the education minister says education must be made more relevant to our national demands.
He says the gap which exists in education must be closed, as education and not money is the cure to poverty, and likewise education, not jail, is the solution to crime. Carla Palmer has more.
Member of Parliament for Marathon, Minister of Education, Science and Technology, the Honourable Jerome Fitzgerald, says the educational system is not broken as many people believe, but rather is in need of reform to bring equity, balance and a focus to those students who year after year fall through the cracks without intervention efforts. This reform plan, he says, is necessary to align the education system with students' interest and the country's national needs. Minister Fitzgerald says the education reform plan will focus on 4 key areas.
The first, Mr. Speaker, is school leadership. School leadership. We are preparing a proper career path and establishing a matrix of at least 20 skill sets that are required to be an effective principal, vice principal, senior master, or senior mistress. We intend to include a period of internship because we have found that the best teachers don't necessarily make the best principals. Further, Mr. Speaker, these appointments should be void of any political interference and should be transparent. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, improve teacher training and improvement seminars. This will be accomplished, Mr. Speaker, through our state-of-the-art Mabel Walker Professional Development Institute, which we shall open within the next 6 months. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, the creation of a school parent unit within the ministry to assist schools with mechanisms and tools to encourage and forge closer relationships between schools and parents. And fourthly, but not lastly, Mr. Speaker, the creation of a school assessment unit which will be responsible for using the test data to not only track students, teachers, and school achievement levels, but also to ensure that intervention strategies are data-driven and that the measuring tools and matrices are established.
The education minister says an uneducated society has a negative impact on the country, resulting in a disastrous effect on the country's economy and welfare. Minister Fitzgerald says improving literacy not only impacts a person's health, but studies have shown that through an educated population, poverty is reduced, and so too is crime. I'm Carla Palmer for ZNS Network News.
If there's one thing Leslie Miller says he's not, it's an abuser. The Tall Pines MP stood on the House floor today defending himself against abuse remarks he made nearly 2 weeks ago in the House of Assembly, which he says were taken out of context.
I've never abused a woman in my entire life. Never. I never will. He got abused.
Leslie Miller found himself on the defense today, following controversial remarks he made in the House of Assembly last week during his contribution to the mid-year budget. Miller was attempting to compare the opposition's behavior on a certain topic to that of an abusive relationship.
During my contribution, I said that their so-called love for the Bahamian people was tantamount to you claiming you love a woman and you're beaten all the time. It was said in jest, and they knew it was said in jest. Yet in the newspapers this morning, the Nassau Guardian, it says Miller under fire for abuse remarks. Now, Mr. Speaker, anybody in their right mind that I have ever abused any woman in my life in this country? You know, it is amazing to me the level that some members would go in this parliament to berate and downgrade others for these cheap political points.
But considering sensitivity of the abuse of women locally, some have asked why Miller would use such an analogy. However, he maintains he didn't mean it literally. And furthermore, he doesn't regret it.
You said you had an ex-girlfriend that you used to beat.
I said I never had no woman I used to beat.
Like that?
I did not say.
But do you regret it?
Nobody.
Do you regret saying
regret what?
Anything
that was
that
in
you
jest
said?
for what?
Miller,
And listen, everybody know me, man, and they know what I stand for. Nobody in this parliament fight for Bahamian women more than me. None. Show me one.
Not amused, Free National Movement Deputy Leader Loretta Butler-Turner says there's no denying what Miller said. She referred to the House's official record.
In this transcript, the Speaker attempted to give him an exit, and the Speaker said to the member for Tall Pines, "We know that you're joking with that." And the member for Tall Pines retorted by saying, and I quote, "No, I am serious with that. I tell her I get tired, man. My hand's hurting a little bit. Give me a break. I am telling you the truth. One thing I don't do is lie."
The Long Island MP cautioned House members about the use of analogies in Parliament to demonstrate certain situations, adding that Miller brought the firestorm on himself.
He needs to apologize to Bahamian women and the Bahamas in general. And I thought the least that could happen is that those remarks be expunged from the record.
Of course, you will recall Butler-Turner is no stranger to physical violence. The Long Island MP was involved in a well-documented and much-discussed physical altercation with former Charlotte MP Dr. Andre Rollins. In June of 2013, the F&M deputy leader slapped the PLP MP following a testy exchange in the foyer of the House of Assembly, claiming that Rollins had placed his hand on her arm. Both MPs issued formal apologies the following day. In sports, the battle is on for the track championships between private schools. We've got the latest coming up in ZNS Total Sports. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.
This segment of the news is brought to you by Shell Quality Fuels.